Then I heard an angry yell, then gurgling. Turns out he stabbed her in the neck 1 minute before the police got there. AskReddit on Reddit rundown. 911 responders? What is a call that you will never forget? This isn't mine, but a friend of mine fielded this call. An elderly gentleman called 911 to notify them that his wife had passed in her sleep. Only it was like 7 o'clock at night. Apparently, he just couldn't deal with it emotionally, so he got her dressed, took her out to the car, and drove around doing his errands for the day. Watched some TV together. And then after 12 or so hours he finally sort of accepted that she was gone and called 911. Someone called stating they had seen a man on a small island on the lake hours ago, but now the man was gone and his boat is still out there. An older woman called in a half hour later stating her husband had gone missing. He was last seen taking his boat out on the lake sometime overnight. The increasing tension in her voice as she noticed sheriff's deputies were already dredging the lake was something else. She was calm but clearly actively dealing with the fact her husband was likely dead. They found his body not long after I hung up with her. Sometimes it's the people screaming that get to you, sometimes it's the quiet acceptance of a horrible truth that stays with you longer. Somebody replied. 4 years ago, when my dad wouldn't answer his phone, his girlfriend called me. We both were concerned that something may have happened to him. She was very apprehensive about driving to his house to check on him. I finally told her I would drive 2.5 hours to check on him. She was only a half hour from his house. Since it was already 10 at night, she told me not to worry about driving up to check, and she would. That was the longest half hour of my life. I paced my house. I resigned myself that he had died. She called me when she got to his house, and I'll never forget the scream she let out when she found him dead on the deck from a massive heart attack. Her scream will haunt me, but that half hour of dread was awful. I can't imagine what that half-hour drive was like for her. Man called to report a male was breaking into his neighbor's vehicle across the street. A few minutes into the call, the man came and started to break into the caller's vehicle. A few minutes later, the man spotted my caller and broke into his house from the window. Spent 10 minutes listening to physical fight when I finally heard the police enter the house and say there's blood everywhere. Both intruder and caller died. Oh, and another 911 dispatcher had my caller's wife and kids on another line who were hiding upstairs and heard everything. I talked to a lot of people who were shot, stabbed, beaten in the final moments of their lives, but you usually get them after the situation occurred. This caller was just trying to look out for his neighbor, and I spent a good 15 to 20 minutes bantering while waiting for officers to arrive and get the auto thief. Getting to joke around and get to know someone's personality before they violently die hit a lot different than taking a call after violence had occurred. Somebody replied, "Gotta love cities where a literal felony is in progress, and the police still take over 20 minutes to show up. I had a drunk driver hit my vehicle and continue driving, managing to get all the way home, without fucking killing anyone thankfully, and when the police showed up to meet me 45 minutes later, they say that she can't be arrested because they don't know if she started drinking when she got home." Despite my day cam footage of her swerving all over the road, and stumbling out of her car when she got home. She was eventually held responsible in civil court, and I was reimbursed for damages and a medical exam. Working as a deputy sheriff. Got a 911 call to the local park for a dead body by suicide. Got there and this lady with a flashlight waved us down. As we approached, we yelled out asking if she was the caller. She said yes. We yelled out again, "Where is the body?" She said right here, pulled out a gun, and offed herself right in front of us. She wanted to make sure we found her body before the kids showed up the next morning to play in the park. I'm not a first responder, but in 2007 my 4 friends and I were driving home at 2 a.m. one night on the highway. No, we were not drinking that night, and up ahead in the distance I could faintly see something in the middle of the road. It was pitch dark, and I slowed down and kept saying, "WTF is that?" over and over again. Well, we slowed down and realized it was a black car with no headlights on, just sitting in the middle of the road, demolished. I pulled over and me and all my friends sprinted to the car and checked it to see if anyone was inside. There was a woman in driver's seat who definitely didn't survive the initial crash, face just completely embedded into the windshield. I can still see this image till this day, and we were looking as fast as we could because we were in the middle of I-95 and thankfully no other cars had come by. We heard a child faintly crying and my friend looks in the back seat and sees there is a child in a car seat who didn't look injured. So we tried to open the door and it wouldn't fully open due to the damage to the car. So we all had to pull at this door to get it open, and let me tell you, as easy as it sounds, that was no easy task for 4 18-year-old kids. But eventually we got it open just enough to get in there and pull the child out. We get to the side of the road and in the blink of an eye a semi comes full speed and pulverizes the car and drags it about 100 feet before coming to a complete stop. We called the state police and they came 15 minutes later, and we waited with the child until they came and questioned us. We were called heroes by all the officers. Later investigations revealed that she came around the turn too fast and hit the guardrail and died on impact. On the way home nobody made a fucking sound. I do search and rescue work. Got a call to respond to a missing lady in her 60s, gone overnight. Police had been searching for hours with no luck, so by the time I got there she had been missing for over 16 hours. This was my K9's first search ever, so I was super nervous but also proud that we could help. The police kept trying to hold me to a small 10 acres set of woods, but my gut said trust my dog, she wasn't there. The police officer got angry with me and decided to go back to the 10 acres while I continued with my K9 into a new area. 5 minutes later my dog gives an alert and I watch which way she went. I climbed over a huge tree to find the lady standing there in shock. She passed out as soon as I said who I was and asked her what her name was. After years of being told I was wasting my time, my dog was shit, and if I wanted to do search and rescue I should get a real dog. It was the most amazing feeling in the world. My K9 is almost retired, has multiple fines and a recovery under her paws now, and she is just simply amazing. Harley motorcycle tipped over and the clutch lever went into a 4-year-old's eye. Parent was on the line asking what to do. Suddenly, she said, "They're going lift the motorcycle." I emphatically told her to tell them to stop and wait for rescue, and EMS rescue ended up cutting off the clutch lever and transporting the kid to hospital. She underwent surgery. That was 1982. Just last year, I met the lead rescue officer and the girl herself, now fully grown. They wanted to meet the 911 operator that saved her vision. I'm not a first responder anymore, but one of my first arson cases was an absolutely hilarious disaster. This husband and wife hated each other but didn't want to get divorced. What they did want was a new house. So, they poured kerosene on approximately 60 rags and stuffed them under the end table next to the couch. Then placed an empty kerosene lamp on the end table. Then they took a 5-gallon gas can full of gas, took the spout off, and placed it in their master bedroom closet. Their completely devoid of all clothing master bedroom closet except for 2 jackets with tassels with the price tag still on them. Then they opened all their safes and left them empty and open in the middle of the bedroom. Then they took all the pictures out of the house and replaced them with random photos they printed off the internet. Then they removed the televisions and replaced them with old TVs. They put the flat screen televisions in their barn. Then they poured a clear trail of gasoline down the hallway. Their alibi was that on the day of the fire, they were trying to sell their canoe. They finally got a buyer, but the only time they could meet the buyer was at 3 a.m. that night. So, they drove 2 hours away to sell a canoe at 3 a.m. the very same night. They then tried to claim the unlit, non-electric kerosene lamp must have exploded. Then they claimed that their crackhead neighbors were trying to frame them for arson. Then the husband claimed that his wife was trying to frame him for arson because she's quote a Blackfoot Indian and they are notorious for not wanting to work. Then he claimed that Sears was trying to frame him for arson because they were tired of paying his settlement after being injured at work 25 years prior. It was a good time. My father used to be a 911 dispatcher, was also an EMT for 5 years and a firefighter for over 30 years. Worst call he ever took was a woman who called that her house was on fire. She was trapped in the burning house and could not get out. First responders did not make it in time. He had to stay on the line with and listen to her as she burned to death. He also witnessed, while responding to a suicide call, one of his friends shoot himself in the face with a shotgun. He was still alive after the shotgun blast. They saved his life. He also responded to an ATV rollover of one of his friend's kids. ATV landed on the kid's face, shattered his skull. His jaw was no longer attached. My dad had to hold his face together while they transported the kid to the hospital. An over 45-minute drive. Kid survived. There are countless other calls that I could tell. My dad has witnessed a lot. Nicest man you will ever meet. 18-year-old took methadone and attacked his mother with a knife. She locked herself in the bathroom and called 999, UK here. We turn up and the son is butt-ass naked climbing out the window in the front door which he'd smashed. He gets taken to the ground and cuffed. Me and another managed to crawl through the window without cutting ourselves and find mother inside. Place is covered in blood smeared up the walls and every knife from the kitchen bloodied and discarded round the house. The adrenaline is just starting wear off as the paramedics arrive for mom, and as they're treating her, we go to the kitchen and find a dismembered member sat on the worktop. Turns out the kid had cut his own penis off after his mom locked herself in the bathroom. If you Google meow meow, slang name for methadone, one of the first results is an article about this call in Rolling Stone magazine, although they say he was hanging out the bedroom window and he wasn't. But yeah, I will never forget holding a penis that was not attached to somebody. Not having to utter the words whose penis is this? Does he have a penis? And wait, don't forget his penis. The ambulance almost left with him while we still had it in the house. My friend is a first responder. He once got a call about a man that had fallen in the shower. He gets there and the guy is over 400 pounds and out cold on the bathroom floor. My friend, his partner and the guy's roommate try everything they can think of to get the guy on the stretcher, but the bathroom is tiny and they can't even roll him over. Eventually they call 2 more ambulances and finally get the guy out of the bathroom. They get to the elevator and it's too small to fit the guy on the stretcher. So, 6 paramedics have to carry the guy down 5 flights of stairs. My friend called in sick for the rest of the week cause he was so sore and stiff, he couldn't move. I once had a call from a 11-year-old girl who was just stabbed by her stepfather. She kicked him in the balls and went to hide and call 911. She was scared and I stayed on the line until her stepfather found her. The last thing I heard was her yelling, "No, please don't do it again." Then I heard an angry yell, then gurgling. Turns out he stabbed her in the neck 1 minute before the police got there. I quit the next day. Man blew his face off with a shotgun. Wasn't dead yet. Scary shit. Also, a couple weeks ago I responded to a woman in labor. Get on scene, she had just delivered. She was naked and holding the baby with the cord still coming out of her vagina. She was high as hell and trying to shoot up one last time before she went with us. With her bloodstream still feeding the baby through the cord. Got a call for a suicidal male. Went to the house, and we could see through the glass someone holding a big knife, but it looked to be a female. It was some type of stained glass stuff. So, we asked what's going on, and if Brian, names have been changed, was home. She yelled, "Brian isn't here anymore." Which isn't great to hear from someone holding a knife. So, we make entry into the house, and after much confusion, figure out that the lady we saw through the window was actually Brian, and was transitioning, or had transitioned, to Brianna. She was in her 50s, and had been struggling for a long time because she'd worked at a place with the same coworkers for 20 years, and after starting her transition she was made fun of and left out of conversations. Her family wasn't supportive, and apparently when she went online to seek help from groups, she was too old and wasn't accepted by them either. So, she wanted to kill herself because of how alone she felt. I was able to chat with her for a while, and convinced her to go to the hospital with me. She was going to go regardless, but there's less stress/danger for everyone if they come voluntarily. When we arrived at the hospital, she said she was too scared to get out of the car. My shift had ended like 30 minutes earlier. I asked her if holding my hand would help. She said yes. So, I get out of the car, and hold her hand walking into the hospital. I'm 5 feet 6 inches, and she's at least 6'2" and outweighs me by 100+ pounds. So, I'm holding her hand, and my hand is like at eye level for me, lol. We go in, and I tell the nurse at the ER that this is Brianna and she's having a bad night, code for wanting to kill herself. The nurse gets her a room, which is where we part ways. I say something to her about getting help and happier days ahead, and she quietly asks for a hug before I go. I say sure and give her a hug. Sometimes I wonder if she found a support group, and if not, if she's still around. I hope so. I work in a region that covers a lot of forest area. I was patrolling and heading to recertify with my firearms when I passed vehicle tracks leading into the trees where vehicles aren't supposed to be. It wasn't unusual for that spot, but I'd never been able to catch anyone up there. Because I was on a timetable, I figured I'd check in it on the way back to the office after an hour or so. We got a bolo for a potentially suicidal male. He was found dead a couple of hours later, in that exact area I was going to check. And now I can't help but wonder if he was alive when I drove by and I could have done something. I'm not a first responder, but a dentistry student. Dentistry professionals can work in the hospital as trauma surgeons of the face. This facial surgeon showed us a case of a man that didn't pay his drug dealers. They took him to an empty field and blew his face off with a shotgun and left. Surprisingly, the man survived and woke up half an hour later and called the police. They spent hours trying to pinpoint his exact locating because at this point, he was somewhere in the middle of an open field and obviously he didn't have eyes anymore to help them. He was taken to the hospital and his surgery took 18 hours, but he did survive. Edit. Today he lives in a rest home with a tube helping him breathe and another helping him eat. Thanks for listening to Reddit Rundown. Give a thumbs up and subscribe, and help me get to 1,000 subs. Leave a comment below on what kind of topics or stories you would like to hear. You can also check out other videos on my channel. Thanks and have an awesome day.